Welcome to the Meditation Podcast. You can find other episodes on meditationpodcast.org. You can find everything about me. You can scan the QR code or go to roycollin.com, where you'll find my 6 podcasts along with all my podcast coaching. If you want to do a podcast tour, I help with that. If you're looking for virtual assistance, go to va.world. My guest, the author of not one book, not two. No, actually, I had to kind of do it a bit different. 21 books, a speaker, holistic counselor. She has worked with over 7,000 clients and thousands of students, uncovering one undeniable truth: unresolved emotions profoundly impact our health, mental well-being, and physical pain. This groundbreaking work explores 722 ailments and the emotional root behind them. And we're not going to have 722 episodes and one each time. No, we'll delve into this. She has taught self-help events in more than 43 countries. From South Africa, living in Indonesia, please welcome Dr. Evette Rose.
Roy, thank you for that wonderful introduction. I am thrilled to be here with you today and with everyone else.
Yeah, no, so I'm looking forward to this. And always it's kind of like at the start, it's like you just feel someone's energy. So straight away it was like, boing, it was, which is fantastic. I suppose.
That's great.
Yeah, no, I mean, you've done incredible things. I mean, even writing that amount of books and just all the stuff that you've done. And like I went through all the different things that you're working on, which is incredible. But what I do, go back a little bit and we'll kind of see the young Evette, what was going on and how you got into all this.
So the young Evette, believe it or not, are you ready?
Still young, so I'll give you that one.
No, I'm in my 40s. Well, I guess that's still young. I think we're still doing okay.
Yeah.
So believe it or not, plot twist. So right now I love helping people, counseling. So it's a very graceful, beautiful, role for me to have. I couldn't imagine my life being any different right now. But the younger Evette actually wanted to become a crime scene investigator and a lawyer. So much so that I actually studied it. I did end up studying it, Roy, but finances and, having to pay for everything myself back then, I didn't, we were not financially well off, and my finances just said no, and I couldn't afford it anymore. So unfortunately, I had to give that up, and I ended up, I was studying business management at the same time, hoping that I can work in business management and then earn more money to pay for my studies. But it just didn't work out. So I ended up in business management and in corporate. I was in corporate. I worked as project support, control support, and all of that, with a lot of men, a lot of testosterone. It was on petrochemical and mining project sites. So we'll be jumping between head office and working actually on site, where the ratio was often 2,000 men and 4 women. So it was a very tough, intimidating environment, very tough, but also we had wonderful teamwork and everything there. So that's really where little Evette wanted to start, but it didn't end up that way.
So I mean, you're like, I suppose let's just touch on this one, because before we delve into the amount of things you're doing, what is metapsychology coaching? Metapsychology coaching, because I think that would be the start.
Right. So this is a really great question. So there was quite a big shift from what I was doing, meaning I was in business, I was in corporate, and then suddenly as most of us have, I had my dark night of the soul. Things just didn't work out the way that I wanted to anymore. My habits, my patterns, the way that I was coping with my life really caught up with me. So I was actually raised by a father that was a clinically diagnosed sociopath. He was a very volatile, hostile person, drug addict. He was an alcoholic as well. Thank goodness I didn't see him a lot, because he was in the pubs pretty much the whole time. I mean, I would see him very briefly before going to school, and then he's out until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And then I'll see him briefly before going to school, and then he's out until late night hours. So my time with him was very limited. But when we did connect, when we did cross paths in that house, it was, I wouldn't say it was graceful. And so this dynamic that I was introduced to from a very early age, and just watching how destructive he was and the way that he lived his life. Of course, any parent who have these destructive patterns, it has an impact on a child's psychology and how, a child starts to formulate and perceive the world. And this, as with any other child, this deeply affected me as well. And I'm thankful that I had my mom, who was the peacekeeper and, the calm one. She's the one that really helped and anchored me quite a lot. And just to put a note out there, because so many people ask me, well, if your dad was such a horrible person, why didn't your mom just divorce him? Right? This is the first thing that goes through everyone's minds. Well, unfortunately, back then, if she did divorce him, he would have 50% custody of me. And that means 50% of the time where she couldn't see me or even know what would be happening to me. So this was quite an incredible sacrifice from her to actually stay, because at least she was there and she could manage things as best as what she could. And witnessing this dynamic with him and how he treated me and the platform that it staged for me in terms of how women are treated, what relationships are like, how men treat women. This tainted my world a completely different color than what it would have for an average person just growing up, maybe some challenges here and there. But this really set me up for quite a very traumatic adult life, which it did. I copied a lot of his behavior, a lot of his anger, a lot of the anger that I had towards him deeply impacted me. And that anger impacted my health as well, because I used that anger that I had towards him as my motivation driver, right? To fight forward, to get through things, to achieve success. And when I was 13, I saw a BMW. Roy, I fell in love. I thought this was the most amazing, beautiful car. I thought, wow, rich, successful people drive these cars and I want one. So I once said to my dad, when he was completely drunk out of his mind, he was sitting on the couch, and I remember I walked into the house, and it happened just that moment when I saw it walking home, and I just sat there and I said, Dad, I saw BMW, and you know what? I'm going to buy one. And he turned around and he looked at me and he said, you will wipe the vomit off the floors in the pubs where I drink, you stupid child. And Roy, something for me just clicked. That was an incredibly powerful moment where, and I could feel in there the shift, where I just decided, I'm going to prove you wrong. Even if it takes everything that I have, I'm going to prove you wrong. And I made it my life mission to do that. I worked so hard. I studied hard. Every time when I felt that I just couldn't go anymore, I just kept seeing this end goal of driving this BMW, having a successful career, and just doing extremely well, like doing better than what he did, because he was in his career, he did extremely well until the alcohol took over and he lost his job as a result of that quite late in his career, but he did really, really well. And believe it or not, long story short, when I was 19, you know what I did? I pulled a brand new BMW off of the car dealership floor. It had 9 kilometers on the speedometer, and I even custom designed that car for 3 months before I bought it. I got my car. I proved him wrong. I had an incredible job. I worked extremely hard. And at this point, I was already flown on a private jet from Kimberley in South Africa to Johannesburg because I worked so hard that the client saw my worth ethics and my skills. And he's like, I need you on my project in Johannesburg now. What is the salary that you want? I'll give you a car. I'll give you an apartment, whatever you need. I need you on my site now. And that's how it started for me. So, but just keep in mind, it was a company car that it gave me. I bought the BMW a few months after that, because when you work on site, what you have is you have a per diem, and that's your spending money. And then you have your salary. And my salary was a very, very generous amount because of the danger pay that you received, because it was a petrochemical site. And so I lived off of my per diem, and I just banked my salary. Banked it, lived my best life, had my dream car, but I ended up in hospital. I ended up in hospital for 2 days because of exhaustion, just working nonstop. You know, sometimes I clocked 85 hours a week, and all because I was still in that mode, in that addictive habit and pattern of proving him wrong. And I needed that anger to fuel me. And fast forward to when I was about 23, this way of life, at this point, I was already in Australia. I was invited to work at a company in Australia because of my skills, because of, you know, it was a very specialized type of industry that we're in. And you really need to know your stuff to really make it in there. And so I was invited with a partner at the time then to move to Australia. And I just said yes, sold the car, sold everything, 2 suitcases, and I went. And did extremely well there as well. But as with anything in life, everything has a threshold. And my mind and my body had its threshold. And I hit that threshold. And this is what, I don't know if you can relate, and anyone else listening, but that dark night of the soul, when you just wake up one day and you just look at your life and you just realize and you're thinking, what am I doing? What am I doing? I was angry all the time because I needed my anger to get me to where I wanted to be. I continued, you know, the pursuit of success. It became such an addictive habit and pattern that I couldn't let go. I couldn't let go. I felt like I was going to die if I let go of that anger. But it also drove me into a lifestyle and into a toxic relationship. I didn't have friends because I was working all the time. I felt lonely. I was miserable. At this point, I started drinking. I slowly became my dad. I slowly became him. And one day, there was just this big, bold question. Why is it that other people are happy and I'm not? What is it that they're doing that I'm not? And thank God for the competitive side in me, which I had. I'm competitive and I'm highly determined. That determination became tainted with the anger. I was naturally a very determined child. And so this is where I sat there. I'm thinking, okay. And this started, just trigger warning, this started because I wanted to end my life that day. And I was very serious about it. I waited for my partner to go to work. And I sat there in front of the computer. This is when I had this whole inner dialogue. And I sat there and I'm thinking, where do we go with this? What do we do? Because this is a day that I cannot repeat again. And I was very clear in myself with that decision, because it wasn't living. I was surviving. And I had everything. I lived in Australia in a beautiful country, 17 acres, 6-bedroom house. I had a tennis court there in the backyard. I had a jacuzzi. I had a pool. And I was barely 23. And I was paying half of all the bills. So this was not me living off of my partner. We were all 50-50. So I was doing really well. And I sat there and I thought, okay, you know what? How and why are all these people happy and I'm not? And that's when I Googled. It might sound funny, but this was my breakthrough. How to be happy. This was way back then when we still had the clunky Dell computers and the keyboards, you know, these big boxes. And I'm typing in there how to be happy. And you know what came up, Roy? just keep in mind, just for reference, for background, at that point, I was a complete atheist because I was raised Christian, but my father was the drunk alcoholic with the Bible under his arm. I had to read hours of that Bible as punishment. It was a very toxic introduction that I had to religion. So when I left the house, I abandoned all of it. I believed in nothing. And now, do you know what came up on my screen? Doreen Virtue, Neil Donald Walsh, crystals, angels. And I sat there and I'm thinking, what a hilarious joke on my supposed to be last day. And I don't know if you can relate, but sometimes there just comes a time in our lives where we just intuitively realize and know that you don't have all the resources that you need. In that moment, you're made to feel that you don't have access to it. And my ego needed to have an ego death in order for me to really truly embrace what was in front of me and not believing in it at the same time. I sat there for, I think, over an hour and I just stared at the screen and I grappled with it. So I thought, okay, I'm going to start with Neil Donald Walsh, Conversations with God. So it was Neil and I started reading. And slowly but surely, I started to open up again and started seeing things differently, started interpreting things differently. And this was my awakening, a very gentle, graceful awakening into, well, let's see, why do I feel the way that I do? I never asked that question. I always just tried to deal with the symptoms of it. I never asked, why do I feel the way that I do? And this is when personal development world just opened up wide. And I was so determined to turn my life around and to also be happy like all the people that I sometimes see around me, that, Roy, believe it or not, 3 months, I was heavily involved in personal development. I quit my job and I started my own business. I fell so in love with the changes that I saw in myself that I'm sitting and I'm thinking, I nearly ended everything that I worked for because I thought there was no other way. And here I'm living my best life. And I'm in charge of my own schedule. It was the most liberating, revelating experience that even just talking about it, I feel doesn't do it justice because of the intensity, the emotions, everything that just went into that. I walked away from that house. I walked away from that partnership. I walked away from the car with just this time one suitcase. I left it all behind. And I started over in another city in Australia. And simply just showing people what I did to improve my quality of life. Just that. Not claiming to help people with things that I don't have experience in, purely just experience that I lived through myself and helping people to show them how I got to the other side of it. We made a few videos. I found a business partner as well, made a few videos, put it on YouTube. Roy, it went viral. This is way back in 2008, right? Like, it went viral. And 6 months later, we were booked ahead overseas for months. And we just did world tours, teaching in different countries and doing extremely well. And this is slowly how my journey started, by learning to understand the power of emotions. They can help you to live your best life, and they can make you feel like you're living in hell. And learning to understand that they are there to guide us, they are there to help us. But what I thought I was dealing with really well, I ended up misunderstanding some of my, how can I say, my drive and motivation. Because just before I turned 30, I had a stress-induced heart attack, which would be a bit of a surprise, thinking, well, you're living your best life. You're showing people how you helped yourself. And here, at that point, I was living in the French Polynesia Islands. Beautiful life, phenomenal, sensational. And here, emotions, again, in a different way, nearly ended things for me. I was lying there in that hospital bed when, it was in a third world country, I might add. My client briefing wasn't very kind. That doctor walked in and he threw a white box of pills on my bed and he said, "Get out of my hospital." And I looked at him and I'm like, and I'm still out of breath from this whole ordeal. And he said, "You don't have a heart problem. You have a goddamn stress problem." And you know what he gave me? Valium. He said, "You need to chill the hell out, Evette." And there I was, barely 30, and dealing with a new crisis. Here's what I didn't know what was happening and what I misunderstood about the power of emotions. Eustress, that's positive stress, right? And research shows that if we have a positive relationship with stress, it's much less likely to impact your health and organs. But if you have an unhealthy association with it, it's more than likely to have this negative stress effect on your health and your immune system and your body. Now, what was interesting, I thought I actually had a positive relationship with stress. I would get off on my highs of stress, let's go. We have another project. We have another country. There's another class. We have more clients, go, go, go. I thought I was living my best life. But what I didn't realize is that I wasn't fully ready to let go of my anger. And this eustress masked the anger. It masked it. And what this whole scenario taught me and how I really deeply developed metapsychology coaching was to realize that the body is never going to fully heal if it doesn't feel safe to let go what we need to heal so that we can live our best life. I did not feel safe to let go of that anger because I associated success with that anger. I associated power, confidence, everything, boundaries. I associated everything with my anger. And my anger wasn't explosive. It was a very internal vortex washing machine is what I can call it. If you looked at me back then, you would not have guessed that I had a lot of anger. You would not have guessed. But my body revealed that through this heart attack. It revealed it through the chronic fatigue, the chronic exhaustion. And this is where I learned the power of feeling safe in order to really, truly heal. Because that's when the nervous system will regulate. That is when we can start to let go. And the stories, the coping mechanisms, the strategies, the associations that we formulated with the behavior that got us to where we were. And realizing that this is not going to help you anymore. It helped you to a certain extent, but realizing even though it was driving me into the ground, I still couldn't let go. And I needed a massive crisis the way that I had to really, truly realize that it's now time to let go and it's not negotiable. So this is how metapsychology coaching, it was metaphysical anatomy, and then I slowly switched to metapsychology coaching because when you look at the word meta is that space between you and I, where a lot of things are happening, but we can't see. For example, we met And then you said you could feel my energy was just boof, just coming through, right? But there wasn't really anything to prove that the energy was coming through. But you could feel that. That's the space between you and I and every single person. This information being exchanged in that space. And the beauty of the capacity that we have. And I know in meditation, we talk a lot about that as well, how we can control energy and matter with our mind. It's the same way as when you are in a cafe and you see someone sitting maybe on the other side. You can't see their face, but have you ever just looked at someone and then suddenly you just felt, wow, that person is really sad. They're really, really upset, right? You just felt it. There was nothing to validate it, but you felt that shift in you so strongly that it changed your state completely, right? That introspection, now it's got your attention, right? Your insula is like, wow, I'm noticing a shift in my body now. What is going on? That mind-body connection. This is the power of how we can read our environment. That meta space, that data that's being transferred between you and that person. You looked at them, energy flows where your focus is. And it's an instinctive response to just naturally scan our environment. We do it without realizing it. And so as you were scanning your environment, that information from that person that came back to you allowed you to understand how they were feeling. And so based on this concept, this is why I developed Metapsychology Coaching, because this is very beautiful psychological tools that I learned how to use with that meta space to elicit and to create changes in another person. Because I sat there and I thought, isn't this interesting? If I can sit here and feel someone else's emotions by just looking at them, not doing anything, and it's changing the physiological responses in my body and the biochemical responses in my body, what can I do if I look at someone with the focused, clear intention? Wow. And that question opened up a whole new door to my business and how to help people. So that's the answer to my question about metapsychology coaching. It was a mouthful, but I
but
felt
it's very interesting.
the history it gives it such power, such meaning as to why did that end up being the way that it was? Yeah.
So, with you're talking about the story, and everyone's got a story, and
Yeah.
kind of they become who they are because of the story. And a simple example, I mean, I was extremely shy, and then kind of realized to get my message out. And I was like in my mid-40s when I decided to do this, went from one extreme to the other, where I started, getting into Toastmasters and then being on stage and doing hundreds of speeches, become mentor and everything. And I kind of said, that was the story I was telling myself, and I hung on to that. And I know it's a lot more painful for a lot of people and what you've been through and everything. But for those that don't know what's the story, because sometimes things have happened that they're not aware of, how can they tap into that?
That's a really great question. So this is normally for me and what worked for me, because that was exactly what my situation was. Because number one, the abuse that I experienced was perfectly normal. It was normal for me. I had no idea that it was not okay. So first of all, it's to build that self-awareness of where do you want to be in life? And then looking at, well, where am I in reality? What is standing between me and where I want to be? This is what really helped me to open up my eyes, to realize and to understand what needs to give, what needs to be released, what needs to change for me to get to where I want to be. That was the biggest and first step that I could take. And for anyone else, I just want to be clear. If you ever do that exercise, you might sit there and think, oh my God, that's a lot, Evette. Like there's a gazillion things right now that I can think of that needs to go. Well, narrow it down by asking and looking at what is the biggest pain point and start with that. And the best thing to do is then to shift your awareness to the somatic experience of the body. Meaning, if there's discomfort in your body, follow with your awareness, where is that discomfort in your body? What does your body want to do? There's something that is in the body that needs to be released, but it doesn't know how. And just that simple awareness, that simple question asking, what does my body want to do, is already going to give you a key factor of what needs to be released. You might feel like, I need to move. Okay. Where do you want to move? Move away from what? What does that feel like? What does your body want to do next? Because Roy, your memories might feel suppressed, but the memories, the somatic memories in your body, they are a lot easier to access than cognitive memories, because your memory becomes impaired anyway if there's heightened stress. A lot of cortisol, we know that it disrupts the hippocampus, and we need cortisol and adrenaline for memory consolidation, but too much of cortisol, it impairs the hippocampus, the limbic system, and that causes memories to be stored in a fragmented way. So the chronological order is completely haywired. That's why we have gaps in our memory. But the body, the nervous system, remembers exactly how it felt during these stressful moments. We store memories cognitively, and what I call it is the emotional body. The body itself stores these memories and these reactions, and even more so reactions that you couldn't act out on. And this energy becomes stuck, and it's stagnant, and it stays in the body. So a beautiful way and a gentle way is to keep asking the body, how do you feel? I feel uncomfortable. Okay, well, where is the discomfort? When you feel the discomfort that is there, does it maybe have a voice? Does it have a face? Does it give you a color? There's so much that can be done by simply just connecting back to the body. And the challenge sometimes is that we don't realize that the body is one of the most powerful entry points to healing. It's just that we have a fear of what we are going to feel, as if though the emotions are happening to us. These are just experiences from the past that is running through you, and they're only coming up to be released. Emotions, like I said earlier, they can help you to live your best life, and they can also make your life hell. So if we don't understand, or at least start to change our perception around emotions, and if our relationship with emotions remain negative, it's always going to taint and sabotage your ability to correctly decode and interpret what the message of these emotions are. Emotions are there really, truly to help you live your best life. But that also means showing you what needs to be released. Because sometimes when these emotions come up, that biochemical response in the body is so strong that it makes a person feel like they're reliving it. And that's what people try to get away from. We are discomfort avoidant. So then we dive into, our coping strategies. We start to sabotage. We start to procrastinate. It's that moment when the emotion comes up where we have 90 seconds in order for the prefrontal cortex to kick in, to start to make a more informed decision on how am I going to react to this? What am I going to do with it? It's that 90-second window that's going to make or break whether you're going to constructively address this emotion, or if you're going to bury it deeper and reinforce a negative coping strategy, which can end up causing more stress, later on down the line, causing you to even probably create even more coping strategies to cope with that strategy in itself. I mean, the ripple effect of this can be incredible, very powerful, but it can be constructive or destructive. So first of all, is to remember that whatever it is that your body is feeling, it's only there because it wants to be released. Believe it or not, the body is solution orientated. Even if we become ill, that's just the body collapsing under not having the resources that it needs in order to cope with the stress that we are ourselves not dealing with. Right? So it's the body's sole purpose to keep you alive. It has no interest in failing you. No interest. So I do hope that does that answer?
No, and I mean,
Oh,
no, definitely, and I suppose I can give people maybe
yeah.
something to add on to that. I was working on a construction site, and I was kind of doing the same thing, working from 8 in the morning till 12 at night, and I was getting lots of promotions, doing well and everything, but it came to it. And then I got back pain, and it was like sciatica, trapped nerve. And I tried everything. I tried acupuncture, faith healer, spiritual healer. No matter, I have a book on the things I tried. I tried everything. Then I got an epidural, and they basically put you to sleep, manipulate you. And then I was getting shooting pain down the other leg. And eventually I was told, you have to get an operation. And I was at my wit's end. It was just like, I don't like medication because it just affects my stomach, and I'm not one for taking tablets. So I went and got the operation, and they were saying, oh, your disc is protruding, and that's what's hitting the nerve, and I expected to come out of that and nothing. Well, I was the exact same, and I was at my wit's end. I was ready to pull the plug at that stage. And for some reason, the book Healing Back Pain by Dr. John Sarno landed on my lap, and I was able to do it through my mind. And over 20 people, I have basically, some people get it down the arm, others on the leg, and it just shows exactly what you've just said, because we think that we have an ailment, and that's what we're told by the medical profession that tried to push kind of lies to make money from you. And then you realize a lot of stuff here is just kind of your way of saying, "Ooh, let's get to it." Based on what you said, that's
I love that. And you just touched on something so important. I actually just wrote a book also this year about solving pain without pills when the answer is not in the bottle. And it's exactly what you said. So much of just pain perception we can control with our mind by just reconnecting back to the body. Because where your focus is, that's where your energy flows. It's what you do with that focus. That is what's going to make or break the experience. It's very powerful what you said, and well done to you. I'm so happy to hear that. What an incredible journey. And I'm curious because I work with psychosomatics, so I'm actually curious now. I'm going to put the spotlight on you now. Was there a message in your lower back? Because normally when we have pain, when we have discomfort, when we have ailments coming forward, there's a trapped message also in the body. Did you notice what the message happened to be for you?
I mean, my thoughts from it was that to be more present in my enjoying life instead of just working, thinking that I get this, I'll save up. I mean, I was able to buy a car from a bonus outright, cash outright, and a good car.
Amazing.
But it's like, you start realizing that it's not all about the money, and it's just be kind of present. And I had another journey as well later, losing everything, and then kind of that's when I got into meditation and breath work, and kind of learned from that. But yeah, I think sometimes, and I see a lot of people when they become money focused, there's other areas that suffer. I've never seen where somebody, like, they're laser focused on money, they become multi-millionaire. And I mentioned it to a few people, and like one guy actually said it to me. He said, there's a common thing with what you're saying. You're talking about all these different people, and multimillionaire, but then there's always problems associated with it. There's never somebody that is perfect, because they're either abusive in their relationships, or they don't have to relate, or they have there's always something.
Something's public, it's not graceful.
Yeah.
It's so true. But it's so true. And it was my experience as well. That was absolutely my experience as well. the heart attack, the anger, the destructive relationships. But to the eye, I had everything. And I did it twice in 2 countries. And my life was hell. It's so true. And what I learned from that is because of the core driver, the foundation on which we build our success. I actually wrote about my heart attack in my book called The Abundance Mindset, which is exactly where I talked about my relationship with money and with success, and how that foundation was layered with this anger. And when you start to build your success on this faulty foundation, subconsciously, you're always going to need the pain or the wounds that helped you to shoot up to that success because it's anchored in with one another. That's the underlying motivating driver. And that's where I had to relearn. How do I change this motivator? How do I change that driver to be healthy, to be peaceful, and to be in alignment with who I am as a person? Because in the past, that driver, it completely disorientated me. I felt like I was ripped into different pieces. I was living different lives. It was chaotic. It's the best way that I could describe it. It was absolutely chaotic. I completely lost touch with myself. And then slowly building that back up, coming from a place of my values. Why do I do what I do? What is it that I'm waking up for every morning? What is the most important about what I do? And so it's really about rebuilding the motivation behind what I do, and then sustaining the financial side of it as well, where I'm learning the balancing act now. And I don't know if you can relate. I don't know I would love to hear what your experience and your story is with that right now. But this relationship where it's almost like it's like a dance. It's like you dance with finances, you dance with success, you dance with happiness, you dance with ruin. Everything just starts to gracefully coexist with one another. And what that collapse taught me, because I forgot to mention, after the heart attack, of course I did the right thing by everyone, but I walked away again. I walked away from the house. My big 6-acre house in the French Polynesian island, I walked away from it all. Everything. And ended up in Indonesia in the backyard of a Balinese family's guest house, sleeping on a mattress on the floor because that's all that I could afford at that point. And slowly but surely building my life back up again. But I deliberately made it my absolute God-given mission to find my happiness before I even tried to rebuild my business back up again. Because I needed to have that anchor in myself so that it's not anchored to money. And that's when I really, truly learned and finally understood what it meant to not be controlled by money. That's when it really hit home completely. It's one thing, when you hear something and you keep hearing it, but then one day it's just like that slap on your head and you're like, now I get it. I get it and I feel it. So that was a much needed awakening, in my opinion. For me, I mean, I'm sure for other people, I wish it to be more graceful for you. You don't have to go through all these being thrown into a tumble dryer and a washing machine and all of that, which I kind of feel like I was in. And that is my greatest wish, is for people to really, truly find that anchor within yourself. Because when you are your own anchor, no one can control you. No one can possess you. You are self-possessed. And that also means that you have accepted that you are perfect at being you. And that contentment, Roy, it's like,
Roy is joy.
I want to say joy. I wanted to say joy, but then I realized I'm also talking to Roy. But that brings a whole new level of joy and happiness. A whole new level, which I haven't been able to meet because my pursuit to that place was faulty and built on a rocky foundation. That is the greatest gift that I ever could have given myself. And honest to God, I wish that for everyone else. That peace and that contentment to feel so in control of your life that even when things get really hard and you feel like you're on your knees, you are still your anchor. And for me, and this is what I love about meditation. So when we kind of connect, I'm like, oh, wow, Roy does meditation. This is so much fun because my breath is my anchor. This is what brings me back into my body. Breathing, just being present. Because when we get stressed, when we panic, we are now stuck in probably 3 or 4 alternative realities, right? The brain doesn't know the difference between imagination and something that's actually happening that happened from the past. So if we get caught up in all these fears and all the stress, your body's having a full-blown biochemical response. And when I start to feel this chaos, I come back to my breath. I come back to what is real. Your breath, your heartbeat, and where you are right now. And this is what anchors me every single time. So that's where, in my pursuit to success, my company, working on myself, failing miserably, I wouldn't even call it failure, but at the time it felt like a complete collapse of everything that I worked for. The shame, the humiliation, the sense of just, how am I going to get back on track? The questions, the self-doubt that it triggered, it was incredible. It was powerful, but not in a good way at the time. But I navigated gracefully my way back to it by finding my anchor. Yeah.
You never, at the time, it's hard to see the light, but when you look back, it's kind of what makes us. And based on what you've just said there, I mean, I've had combined, I suppose, I've had in syndicates and things like that, I had as many houses as you have books written. And
Oh my goodness.
I had a lot of stuff that I was doing. I was doing very well. And then the crash happened. I still was doing well. But eventually, all this, the syndicate that I was with, they lost everything. And I was kind of paying for it. And then I ran out.
Oh, wow.
But not only did I lose everything, but I was personally liable because I was the president of all these companies. And I was liable for about $5 million or euro. It was like 20 million zloty. And I went through
That's a lot.
over 100 court cases fighting that and everything. And then that's kind of where my mission came from, fighting, exposing corruption, fraud and corruption, but with solutions.
Okay.
But through that journey, I said, how were they able to do this to me? Because everything I did was right. They were doing all fraudulent stuff. I could see bailiffs like bribing people in the room and everything, like the things that go on. But it's international because once I get my own and started watching it, and through that, then I started reading books and started getting guests on and starting understanding sovereignty and realizing the power. And you mentioned about being free and realizing you're free. I've never felt so free in my life. And it's like they've come after me. They tried to get me in court. They tried to get bail after me. I got them all to back away. And even when the lockdown was on, I wouldn't comply with wearing a mask. And it, irrespective of what you believe, that has nothing to do with me. But I just said, I had studied it and I realized the dangers of it and that the whole lot was a farce. So that was on my own education of what I'd done. I guess I got, and police came up to me and they screamed at me and I just turned to them and I said, are you talking to me? And they just went in shock. And I just walked on and I was with my son and he was like, I kind of showed him a lesson. And everything I do now, it's like, I do not let anyone, I've screamed at judges because I saw corruption. I stand up to the police, anyone, even detectives and everything. I no longer allow people to manipulate me. I don't abuse anyone. I'm not aggressive, but I will not tolerate. And you see them, they're like puppies. Their head goes down when they do that. And most people wouldn't even realize you can do that. But when you stand in your own power and your own freedom And I wish more people would realize that and realize the power of the signature as well, because all the corruption that people do, it's all about, here, sign that there, please. And you sign it and you just comply to what they want you to do, and then you're liable. And when you realize your own power, they all back off.
Yeah. And you know, that incredibly powerful moment of realizing your power, you know, you just touched on something so important, because a big part of, and I don't know if it was the same for you, but for me, I realized this story that I was telling myself about myself, it's that echo, it's that mirror reflection of how we were treated as children. You know, that toxic feedback, the negative talk, the being shut down, you know, emotionally unavailable parents, right? All of this. And all that feedback that starts to become this internalized voice and almost serves as like this barometer of what we think we can and cannot have. I once did a meditation, and in that meditation, I realized this false belief. Like, it's one thing to hear, oh, but that's a false belief. But again, this is coming back to what I was saying earlier as well, to really feel that, to really get it, to really grasp it. And when I realized how all this negative feedback is what I place my worth on, and that all this feedback is just traumatized opinions from people who don't have it together. And here I am giving my absolute power away to all of that. And I called my power back from that. And Roy, wow, that was another big moment for me. So I love what you said there about standing in your power, but I want to know, what did you do to get into your power? Like, what was your mental process for that?
Well, I suppose, overcame a lot of the stuff. One was the meditate. I came across
Resilience, yeah.
a guided meditation, and it was like that definitely helped me. One was gratitude, because we're all, I mean, there's millions of people now going through their own battles, and they don't realize what's happening to their neighbor until it happens to them, and then they kind of realize how dark things can get. We all have our own journey, but with what I've realized is what you're grateful for, we start attracting more of it. And it's like what you were saying earlier. You see somebody with the energy, it's the same thing. You put your energy towards lack or bills. What do you attract? What comes in the door? Bills. Because if you're thinking bills, but if you start thinking abundance and money, and it starts working. And the other always forgiveness. And I know I mentioned it sometimes, but it's been a while since maybe I said it on the show. But there was a load of stuff that I had, big bucks. And I said, I have to forgive people. And just the way people had robbed me and different things. And some were okay, but there was some that were so big, it was so hard. And what I done is I brought him back to the child. I said, we have unconditional love for a child. And when we see a child, you just have love. It's like, even there now, my mom is sending me pictures of a 1-year-old, a cousin. And I'm like, it's just, you just want to give the child. Yeah. And I kind of brought them all back to the child. And I said, they were like freed, like we're talking about, but yet external circumstances like the abuse of alcoholic parent or whatever, our parents working so hard that they take their eye off the ball, and then the person became who they are. So I was able to forgive him by saying it was external circumstances made them who they were. But what it did is it freed it from me, because I had the hatred. They weren't thinking about me. And once I forgave them, it was like liberating. Yeah, I encourage everybody. Forgiveness is so powerful.
It really is. I love that. That's such a beautiful way of dealing with it. I also got introduced to gratitude. You know, at first it was really hard because I was actually going through massive depression at the time. And I'm thinking, what am I supposed to be thankful for? And that's why I wrote the book about depression. That's why I have so many books, right? Every book is about a meltdown that I had in my life, and then what I did to overcome that, right? And, you know, sometimes when life just gets so stressful and we get so caught up, we need to come back to basics. Which is exactly that, gratitude. And for me, when I hope this can help at least just someone out there, like if you're really going through it. To do gratitude for me was tough, but I looked at it from the perspective of just walking outside, and then I'll look at a tree and I'll see the leaf just move a specific way just for a split second. And I'll just stand there and I'm like, wow, I just captured a unique moment that no one else saw. A beautiful, unique moment that's never going to be repeated in the exact same way again. And just that moment really brought me into the present, because my depression was so bad. I was on very heavy medication in my early 20s, very, very heavy. And just to start with the small appreciation of just coming back to the little things. A bird just sat there and it just sang. What a beautiful sound. And I was the only witness. And it was so beautiful. It was there just for me. Like just connecting to these moments, just these simple little things, just being thankful for being able to breathe. Simple, simple things. Because we are so good at overcomplicating our life that when we start to come back to simplicity, it really helps to balance out that reference for the perceived challenges that we thought we have, because it gives that fresh baseline. As an example, you know, they say sometimes too much of a good thing or too much of the same thing is you can start to feel unhappy with it, mundane. Some people might call it like just a passing wave of maybe depression, not fully clinical depression. I'm going to share something with you and everyone else, what I actually do in my life to keep myself balanced. Say, for example, I travel. We will sometimes stay in a 2-star, maybe a 1-star hotel for a few days, and then we'll switch back to 4-star or 3-star. Just to come back into that place of, wow, I appreciate having a clean room. I appreciate having a television that works. I appreciate having clean sheets. Just these simple little things. I constantly live my life to have regular references so that I don't become a spoiled brat. Because I really truly believe this variety, sometimes just creating that little bit of discomfort in a healthy way, helps us to stay connected to what once brought us joy as well. So I don't know, have you ever tried something like that? Or sometimes just have just a bad, bland meal, a boring meal for a few days, and then suddenly, you know, you cook something really nice, really extravagant, and you just go like, wow, this is so amazing. I appreciate it so much. Whereas if you eat, you know, this glamorous meal every day, you just don't appreciate it anymore.
No, definitely. I think you have to reset.
Have you tried that?
No, you have to reset and sometimes you think what's your favorite meal, and then it's like then you go and you just go off it, and then when you have it maybe 3 months later, you really appreciate it again. It's
Yeah.
But what you're saying about kind of being, you know, at one with nature, I mean, that's one thing that I really do. I mean, I just love, just the other day I looked out and there was a fox in the garden, and it's like, I look at the birds on the
nice.
trees, yeah, and it's like, even the cats, like they're wild cats, but they're just looking in at you, and I just stare them away, or just watching the ants and everything, and just watching
that's
nature.
nice.
Because you're like, even a squirrel, or the squirrel was running around the tree, and then it's dropping the nuts, and I was just like standing there for 20 minutes, just admiring it, enjoying
Yeah.
you know, and it's like, whereas most people, they're walking along and they're done looking at their phone and they don't see these things. There's so much beauty happening. And, you know, you mentioned about the leaf in the tree. I saw a thing on a video where somebody was saying you can ask the tree to touch you. And I saw a few of them. And I went out and I'd done it and it happened. And I was like,
really?
This is interesting. And I was telling my mom, and my mom was kind of like, And I did it live while I was talking to her. I said, look, you see, that's not touching me. And I gave it permission to touch me. And the tree came down and touched me. And it's like,
I am so going to go talk to the trees now to do that.
Because there's a book, The Hidden Life of Trees, I think, or something like that. Because I was at a guy's 40th birthday. And I read about 100 books a year. And we just started talking about books, and the two others read 100, which is so strange. 3 people that read about 100 books a year. And I said, what's the favorite? And they both said the same book. And I said, I need to get this. And it's just showing how trees are connected and everything. So then every time I'm out, I'm looking, or just, like, apparently you can grow it yourself, just touching the tree as well.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it's like,
I have
from
hugged a lot of trees.
yeah, it's good for you. It
I
actually
have
grows,
hugged
yeah.
trees.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. But I didn't know about the touching part.
Yeah, so you stand there and just say it's there, and
Yeah.
not when there's wind, because obviously you can, and just give it permission to touch, and it's just like, wow, this is amazing. Yeah.
Any kind of tree, right?
Yeah, once it's got leaves and stuff like that, yeah. You should.
Yes, of course. Wow. I'm so going to do that now. I love that. I love that. Gonna get a high five from nature. I love that. How you doing? I'm doing good, buddy. High five. I love it. Beautiful.
So this is one, and I'd like to keep it more upbeat, but I'm very conscious of what's going on in the world. And just even when I grew up, I could see a lot of, what your story, that was kind of, I saw a lot of that. And, I had loving parents, and we used to sit around and eat and everything. So I was kind of lucky from and even when I came to Poland, I saw a lot of alcoholics in me. But based on your journey and understanding and all of your studies, and it's fantastic that you're writing about every kind of hiccup that, I call it a hiccup, is not, it's all a learning, because writing that book is helping so many people, because I think it lands in their lap. But if there's children now, and it doesn't matter irrespective of the age, because I can even see it, there's so much mental issues. It's like, we're looking at stats, we're talking in the billions. It's like, you can see it even from the tattoos, from the gender changing. There's so many things going on. But when they're in the home, and whether it's one or two parents, and unfortunately, before there was a time some could split and they could both have their own, them days are gone, because there's even people in their 40 can't buy a house. If you're talking to the child or trying to give advice, I know it's a very difficult one. How do you think they should navigate it? If they're in a similar situation, or where there's, and sometimes it's the women, it's not just the men, because I have seen women that are the problem, and the man is okay, but it's the same thing. It's like there's turmoil in the house. How should a child navigate that? Because it's a very difficult one, and there's millions go through that.
It's true. So I'm going to tell you what I did as a 13-year-old. And that was, I know this is probably not the best answer, but it saved me. It saved my mental health, and it actually helped me to be in a little bit more of a positive state than what I was at that time. And that was, you see people who are goal orientated getting through circumstances much better than people who do not have a goal. My goal was to get out of that house, to get out and never put my foot back in it. And Roy, that's exactly what I did. At night, I was lying in my bed, and I would visualize the life that I wanted and how I'm going to get there. And you know what? That is exactly what happened. That is exactly what happened. Remember, we all have strengths in life. And if you look at the last challenge that you had, what got you through that? What strength did you have that got you through that? Tap on that. Tap on that strength and ask yourself, how can I tap on that strength in this very moment now? But on top of that, have a goal. Have a clear, set goal. Even if your end goal sometimes changes, keep your eye on the ball. And as you move from here to that goal, this is your stepping stones. Where you are right now is not going to be your life forever. It's a stepping stone. And you're going to get out of it, and you will create the life that you want. But you have to keep your eye on the goal. This, Roy, it got me through really, really dark times. I mean, I didn't share this, but we lived in a terrible neighborhood. in a very, very bad neighborhood, where I was too scared to leave the house by myself. It was really tough, trying times financially as well. I mean, there was no hope for me. So I ended up, and I'm going to share this, I ended up working 2 jobs. I worked 2 jobs to pay for my college, to pay for my business management certificate so that I can get a job, and then pay for my, crime scene investigating and law and everything that I wanted to do. But I studied so hard that I was able to skip grade 11 because I went to a private school because of an incident that took place, which we didn't even have time to touch on. But I couldn't finish high school because of something that had happened. And so I went to a private school that we couldn't afford. And so I got the 2 jobs, and I went to a government private, not a private school, but just a distance learning school. And I had to teach myself. I was 15. I had to coach and teach myself through school, wrote exams every Friday, and the rest of the time I was working. I didn't have a normal teenage life like most people did. I didn't have a graduation. I don't get reunion invitations, right? My life was very different. So please don't take what I'm saying very lightly. I'm coming from a place where I had my own hardships in that. And what I absolutely can tell you is, if you have a goal, it made me get up every day, work hard, get through that job. I was cleaning bookshelves. I was cleaning toilets. And the other job was as a receptionist as a gym. I did it, and I did whatever I had to get out of that house. Because the moment you leave that house, you are your own authority. And this was that got me through it successfully. As hard as it was, as isolating as it was, as tough as it was, I did it. But I will say it wasn't easy, but I hope that it helps. You need to have a goal.
Oh, that's beautiful, because a lot of times people, they're kind of saying, the circumstances, blaming on the circumstances, poor me, and then they're thinking about, and then they're just attracting it, and unfortunately they come out of the house and then they attract the exact same thing. Where's the goal? Because I know that there'll be people listening that might even know somebody, but they might have access to the child, and they can just sit down and just mention what you've just said and said, what's your goal? Have a dream.
That's it.
And it just shifts everything. It's like, no, I have a different mission in life, and you're no longer the victim. You're just, okay, I have a goal in life. And I know it's kind of different, because it's like, say for me, my mission became to expose fraud and corruption. It's no longer about me. I'm tiny when you consider the mission of actually what I'm trying to achieve. And I think when people become mission driven, then life, you're not looking at every single little thing that's happening to you. You're just looking at the bigger picture, which makes life a lot better.
Right. Right. And listen, let me tell you, people, if you look at people out there as well who are successful in life, they are goal orientated, and they are disciplined, and they've learned how to use the strengths that they used in the past to get through challenges, to support them through hard times. Every single one of them. Every single one of them. I cannot stress enough to you, it's so important to have something that you can wake up to look forward to. It is the absolute pivotal, holy grail foundation of successfully getting out.
It's you jump out of bed instead of crawling out of bed. That's the difference.
That's it. That's it. I hated school. Roy, I hated school. I sat in a type of school where, the kid would pass a bag with drugs right across my face to the other kid, drug dealing, screaming and shouting. The teachers would walk out. The education system was in South Africa back then. It was horrific. It was horrific. And so going to school was just not even a point, or an option. But like I said, something happened and I had to leave school as a result of it and build my life back up all by myself. Mom's working during the day. I'm working as well during the day, 2 jobs, come back, study, and the next day I do it all over again. Did I have days where I was crying my eyes out or cried myself to sleep? Absolutely. Absolutely. But the difference is I kept my eye on the goal. I kept my eye on the goal. And to this day, I am a goal-orientated person. I always know where I'm going. No matter how big or small the goal is, people always think of a goal, oh, it has to be this massive thing. No, my goal was just to get out of the house, to secure a proper job, and to have my own transport. I didn't care what the transport looked like. I didn't care what the house looked like. I don't care what the job was, but I did it. And I managed to do it better than what I even imagined. Determination and building your resilience by seeing every day that comes to a close, you did it. You made it through that day. Give yourself a goddamn pat on the back. No matter how ugly that day was, you got through it. So this is what helped me. And I really, truly wish that this would be that flame that lights the spark in someone else's heart.
And I think based on both of our experiences, like your life, we just go through different stages. You think everything is, and it can change. And the beauty is you realize that you change for the better. You kind of move on and something happens. You don't make the same mistakes. You look back and obviously at each transition, it's painful. And we think it's very hard to think you're going to get out of this. But as you said, you were in the bed on the floor. But then you look back and you appreciate where you are now because you understand.
Thank God.
And it's like, who knows what's around the corner and everything, but we can reinvent ourselves. So don't let it define ourselves. When we get hit with a curveball, you just brush yourself and learn and move on.
And one final statement or suggestion: always make a decision that your future wiser self will thank you for. And this is what I kept thinking about when I wobbled, when I felt like this is too hard. I can't do this anymore. Okay, how can I turn this around? What do I need to do right now that my future would be thankful for? And that's just another way of keeping your eye on the goal. I understand a lot of people might now say, yeah, but that's teaching people not to deal with the present moment. Well, hang on there. You were not grown up, or you were not raised with a fist. You were not raised with the belt flying at your head. You were not raised with an alcoholic and a sociopath that was out of his goddamn mind. You want to tell me how to teach me to be in the present for anyone else who can relate to that? People who are in violent homes, people who are in hostile homes, people who are in homes where the parents are just completely so switched off. It's okay to not want to be present in that moment. It's perfectly okay. Sometimes we need to adapt to coping strategies to just get through that moment. But when you get to your goal, it's important to do the groundwork, to clean up what needs to be cleaned up so that you can really, truly enjoy what you created. And not like me, go through the anger, the turmoil, the self-destruction, the heart attack before you would learn to reconstruct your life so that you can enjoy it. I see both sides of it. I really do. But Roy, that is what got me through really dark times. And let me tell you that. Because when you live in a house and you're at the mercy of a violent parent, it's really hard to explain to someone else who doesn't live that life what it feels like. It's a very isolating life to have. Very isolating. So for anyone else going through that, have your goal and stick to it.
Beautiful, beautiful. Listen, Evette, thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I've paid trips
Thank you.
we didn't even touch, so we have to get
God bless.
And I know that you've been grateful enough to give me a meditation which will go out after this episode called
Yes.
Boundary Healing Meditation, and I listened to it, very
Yeah.
enjoyable. So I'll encourage people as
Good.
well after listening to this to listen to the
Yes.
meditation that will go out in the next day from
Yeah.
when the release. So you might let the listeners know where they can find you.
Oh, of course, I am at www.metaphysicalanatomy.com. Everything is there.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, because I know you've got very successful YouTube and Instagram and everything. So I'll actually put them in as well, because sometimes people will follow based on what they're
Yeah.
And definitely I'll get you back in a few months' time, because the stuff that you're covering is
I would
very
love that.
relevant, and it's really helpful to society because it's badly needed.
Of course.
Yeah, so
I would love that. Definitely. Part 2 coming up, everyone.
so thank you very much. So
Thank you, Roy.
no problem. So that's all for the meditation podcast. You'll find all our episodes on meditationpodcast.org. You can scan the QR code or go to roycollin.com, where you'll find my 6 podcasts. You'll find everything about my coaching. If you're looking for a virtual assistant, go to va.world. Sure, give us a thumbs up, 5-star rating, share with your friends. And I'll also give the link to Evette's podcast, and make sure you do the same there. Until next week, take care.